Hello, everyone, and welcome to an all-new Deep Cuts Live. I'm your host, Antoine Reid, and today we have with us Mo from Patina Cigars. As you probably have heard for the last couple of months, Mo is someone that I ran into at the PCA trade show, and I thought to myself, I have not had Mo on the show. And so a couple of weeks ago, I reached out to him, and luckily he was available. So let's bring on our guest for today. Mo, how are you?
Yeah, hey, good, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, like I was saying, I know that I saw you at PCA and I was like,
Uh-huh.
I've never had Mo on the show. I haven't written a story about Patina Cigars. And so I was like, I think it's time.
Right, yeah. You were like, this guy seems boring. Let's get him on. We'll put everybody to sleep. People are gonna start watching the Patina episode as melatonin.
No, like, you know what? You're helping me to like round out this, as I call it, a season of the show. Like we've, like we were talking a little bit before the show went live about what I do and stuff like that. And Deep Cuts for me has been like a little side project hustle kind of thing where I just really wanted to learn more about the cigar industry during the pandemic. I wrote about it, but everyone lives in their own bubble, and so you don't always get to speak to lots of people until you get into a trade show experience. And pandemic, all the trade shows were getting canceled, all the events were getting canceled, and it was like this might be a good time to like speak to people one-on-one in these little Zoom type conference calls and let everyone kind of tune in and watch it. So like I said, I want to thank you for coming on because I think my hope is that people learn more about you and learn more about Patina, and the next time they kind of see your cigars in the humidor, they're like a little bit more familiar with you and your story, and hopefully they pick up that cigar and give it a try.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's an honor to be here. You're providing me a platform to talk about what I'm doing, so thank you for providing that platform and having me on. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem. I was telling you about it was fun because like before people don't get to see like the conversations that happen before we hit the live button. So Mo was asking me about, he was interviewing me basically, like where am I from? How did I get here? Like what's the 9 to 5 like and stuff like that. So, like I was telling you that from Durham, which if people know, I know that lots of people are sports people so Durham is where Duke is. And yet I went to UNC Chapel Hill. So I'm always wary about walking around Durham, like in Chapel Hill, Carolina, like attire, because I never want to instigate anything with people. And yet, sometimes I go incognito, like every morning I go for a walk, and I actually have a Duke hat that I put on just to blend into the area. So
is it true that you have to have a passport to go between the two? Like there's like a security checkpoint?
No, it's funny that there's actually like I know that was a joke, but there's actually like a little scholarship thing that goes on between the two schools where they do bus people from Duke to UNC and back and forth. I'm pretty sure it still goes on, but it's a really strange, because like the whole area is just like all mixed up because it's like college central. You have Duke, you have UNC, you have the Wolfpack, you have NC State in the area. We have Shaw, we have A&T. That's not that far away. So you have a whole bunch of college stuff going on in like central North Carolina.
Wasn't A&T one of the first schools to actually get Jordan brand apparel? I think it was them, the University of Cincinnati, and somebody, and I don't know how old you are, Anton, but this was probably like late 90s, early 2000s when Jordan actually started sponsoring schools. But I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, well, no, because I'm not a sports person though. Like, if you ask me about pop culture, then I'm all over it. But like,
okay. So I'm the opposite. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm like Jordan. I'm like Michael Jordan. Like, so no. So yeah, but but anyways, I digress. So it's just funny how I think the cigar industry is so big, and yet, you can be. I've been in it since 2010, and yet you and I have never had like a real long conversation, if at all. I know we've known we follow each other on Instagram, and and stuff like that. And I've seen you on other people's podcasts. I've listened to. I know you were on the Lounge Experience, so with Erica and Amy.
Oh yeah.
At one point, and you were on Bear's podcast, and stuff like that. So I've kind of followed your story around, and like I said, and then it's like now that the year's kind of letting up a little bit. I was like, I think it's time for that me and Mo have a conversation, because there's certain things that I don't know how you feel about the cigar industry, but I feel like most of the conversations kind of start with, talking about straight up product, and it jumps right in there without getting the story, because we kind of assume at a certain point, like everybody knows the story, but then it's like we got far away from telling the backstories that not everybody knows that story. So not everybody can connect with the brands. Like they think like maybe the companies think they can. So I'm always interested in people's backstories, because I think that's how we kind of get into wanting to buy into certain brands and try different products. So very interested in learning your story within the time that we have today.
Okay. Where do you want me to start?
And so I want you to tell us, how did you get into cigars in general?
Oh, okay. So I guess we'll start with how Patina came to be.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah.
So in 2012, I moved down to Tulsa, Oklahoma for a job. I met my buddy Drew. 2 years later, I was moving back to Illinois, and I'm from the Chicago area. So we were like, hey, man, and we used to smoke cigars every weekend together, and I mean, sometimes multiple times a week, but I wasn't, purely as consumers, right? So now, mind you, this is 2014, so this was a while ago. I can't believe that's 8 years ago now, but, so we're like, man, we really want to keep in touch. What's a way that we can keep in touch? So we started a cigar review blog called the Sultans of Smoke. I mean, we were just two nerds that decided that, we were going to do this, and still am a nerd, just different evolved nerd, I guess, cigar nerd. So we started reviewing cigars, and we made a rating system based on Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone movies. So, we start getting a little bit of attention. Famous Smoke, House of Emilio were sending us cigars to review. Southern Draw, a new brand on the scene at that time, sent us some cigars to review. Black Label Trading, which was new at that time, or newer. So we started to kind of connect with these people, and my buddy Drew says, hey, man, why don't we make a cigar with James Brown? And I said, all right, well, what does that mean? And so we end up working with James Brown, as he was, and for those that might not, James Brown is the owner of Black Label Trading Cigars. And they had just bought Oveja Negra at that time, so it was like perfect timing, right? He's going into a new factory, extra little business would probably help, So he makes us these two cigars for the podcast, and that's kind of how everything started, man. And then from there, it kind of evolved into, God, I'm really sick of the corporate world. I think that I could do this and try to make a go at it, and yeah. So it was a big risk at the time, because the FDA stuff was still in limbo. But I was like, if I could get in before any FDA stuff, then it's going to be a lot harder to get in after this. Which I'm glad, we're still up in the air about the FDA stuff 6 years later. So, but we'll figure it out eventually. So yeah, man, that was kind of like how it all came to be. So yeah, it started out from a review blog to a podcast. We were doing a podcast back, and I think we started 2014 15 on the podcast side, which I still do, although we've been on hiatus recently. So yeah, man, that's kind of all what led into it and how it, just with that cigar that we did for that.
Now, with the review blog that you did,
Mm-hmm.
I'm always curious about ratings and reviews and stuff like that. That was back then. Like, how do you think reviews in the industry have evolved? Because it seems like probably back then you may have been like one of the few kind of really doing reviews outside of
Yes,
Cigar Aficionado and
100,
stuff like that.
absolutely.
Now,
Yeah,
from what I observe, it's like when people want to start, getting into the media side of the cigar industry, they
yeah,
immediately go into, wanting to be cigar reviewers. And maybe it's they think they're going to get the notoriety. Maybe it's for they're
right.
going to get new product or free product. Like, how do you think that whole review part of the industry has kind of evolved over the years?
Um, it went from, that's a tough question to answer, man. And I know for us at that time, we were one of the only ones really doing it, like you said, outside of the big publications. Now, the difference between us and some of these other guys, we were not that ambitious on that stuff. We did it for us. So, we would do cigar reviews while we paired it with protein shakes or like Dr. Pepper or, it was like more about having fun with the cigars. And looking back on it, we had no business really reviewing cigars, to be honest with you, because we didn't really know a lot about how to properly review a cigar if you're going to tell somebody to smoke it or not, right? In that sense, I guess, but we didn't know what we didn't know, and again, there wasn't many people doing it for us to be like, oh yeah, this is how you got to do it. But I think the one thing I would say is, from my perspective, whether it's a good review, bad review, whatever somebody thinks, it's, what are you going to do? You really have to learn not to get too high or too low, or it's just not healthy. So I'm not really sure how it's evolved. There's just a lot more people doing it. And anybody, it feels like, that has a camera can set up a YouTube channel, or anybody that can make a website and review cigars, there's no barriers to entry,
Right.
is I guess my point. And anybody could do it. So my thing is, if you are going to review cigars, take it seriously, understand what you're doing, understanding that the bigger your following, the more impact you will have on somebody's livelihood. You might go back to your job, but what you said about that cigar could impact somebody, right? So be fair, be honest, of course. But sometimes it feels like, I'll read some of these reviews, man, and I'm just like, holy shit. Like, wow, that's brutal. You know what I mean? Like, and luckily I haven't had one of those yet, but I'm sure at some point, someone's going to say this cigar. So, it's like, this is the best cigar I've ever smoked. This is the worst cigar I've ever. I mean, you go to a cigar shop, everyone's got an opinion, right? So,
Right. Yeah, and I think you said several things that I think should be touched on, and the fact that I know you kind of played down, like, how I guess ready you were to do reviews, and you said that you were pairing it with different things like protein shakes and stuff like that, and yet
because that's how we smoked cigars.
Right. But I was about to say,
we reviewed it, yeah.
Because it makes it more accessible. Because like not everyone is going to be sitting there drinking a cigar with a bourbon every day, and not everyone's, not everyone drinks alcohol, and there are different times a day, like you drink it with coffee, and yet you don't see lots of reviews right now, like with, I paired this with, this coffee brand, and I was, taste it like this, and the flavor notes, and this is how. You don't, there's some people who drink tea. You don't see any tea reviews. You don't see people saying like I'm drinking the cigar with doing the cigar with a green tea or whatever. So I think you try to make it more accessible, which I don't see it now. But you also made it a little bit fun to read because you probably never knew what exactly you all were going to pair it with. And I think
No.
lots of reviews now seem very formulaic. It's like you kind of know what to expect. And like you said, sometimes there are certain people who are going to be very hard on a cigar
Yeah.
of being hard on it. Like no cigar is going to get above a 5-star, or no cigar is going to get above a 9. You have to be at this level. And so I think that's the part the issue I have with lots of reviews is that
I mean, I can go into more, but that's just not who. I think that if you pay too much attention to that stuff, it's detrimental to you as you're trying to build a brand. Whether you get really good reviews or whatever reviews, you got to try to stay even keel, man. And I think that's why I don't really pay as much attention to it as I probably should, to be honest with you. But we don't do this. I don't do these cigars for the reviews. I do them for people to enjoy, and that's what I care about ultimately. Like that's it.
I think it's a shame in the industry that there's no standard to review or rate a cigar. It's like you're kind of, even here in 2022, you're left to kind of come up with your own way of rating a cigar. Therefore, one person's 90 is another person's 89, or another person's 93, and right now completely different criteria. Because I've seen some companies, like how they rate cigars internally, and it makes perfect sense to get it written down on paper. Like they have construction issues. Is the burn even? Is the wrapper coming undone at a certain point?
Right.
But not everybody's rating cigars like that.
No, a lot of it is subjective. It was certainly when we were doing it too. I'm not saying we were any different. I would hope as it evolves, though, that people do, if you're going to review a cigar, your feeling on whether it's good or not, and what you're saying, the only way to achieve that formulaic approach that you're talking about is subjectivity would have to be completely taken out of it, I think. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure how you take subjectivity out of something that's meant to be consumed. I think it'd be really tough. Even no matter how much you say it's out of my formula, like it's not part of this formula, I think you're still going to be jaded. Because like if a cigar performs really, really well based on your formula and the things you look for to rate a cigar, but you know that you didn't like it, are you still going to go with that score? Like if it performed well from all these like different technical perspectives? I don't know. That I'm asking. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, and I don't know if, like, for example, if you're a media person and you're looking for sponsorships for your blog or your podcast, and somebody sends you a cigar and it's not good, like, are you really going to say that it's not good? And and then if you're on the other side of it, if you're a company and you're like, I want to know your opinion, and that opinion doesn't really agree with what your marketing plans are and such, are you not going to take it out on that person to say, like, okay, next year when they come asking for sponsorship money or whatever, we're gonna have our own hard rating consideration. So I think it goes both ways.
Absolutely, and that's not just in cigars. That's any consumable or usable item. I don't care if it's cigars, alcohol, workout supplements, clothing. I mean, it doesn't. People are looking to get paid. I mean, I hate to say that, but especially in today's world, like you said, someone is doing a review or whatever. I'm pairing it with this coffee. I'm using this lighter. I'm doing that for their health. Doing it because so.
So when when you decided to go and create your own brand, Patina, um, what what was the biggest challenge that you had to really deal with?
It's still dealing with it. And that's just establishing legitimacy, um, establishing that you're for real, that you belong in humidors, not only on a retail level, but also in people's personal humidors. So that's the big thing, man. It's just constantly trying to establish that legitimacy, establish that you're going to be around every year that goes by. Obviously, you show that, but yeah, I think that's the hardest thing is getting people to buy into what you're doing because people don't only smoke cigars for how they, taste. They smoke cigars based on does it represent a part of me? Do I feel good smoking this cigar? Do I feel good buying this cigar? Does it make me feel good when I buy this cigar? I think there's a lot more psychology that goes into it than just the cigar itself. And to be honest, I wish I would have understood more of that when I started.
When you say like the legitimate factor, like
Hmm.
obviously, I mean, before you even get to the consumer part, you have to establish that you're legitimate in the eyes of the retailer, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
And like for when you speak to retailers and you kind of take into account how it was when you first began and now,
Hmm.
like what are
Yeah.
some of the objections that they have? Like, do they give you for saying like, oh, like when they say like they offer some pushback against just keep giving our a try? 'Cause I'm sure there are plenty of reasons that
Yeah.
they give that you
Oh,
probably heard it all. So what are some of those
oh,
kind of?
pretty much. I mean, there's a multitude of reasons. Some of them are legitimate. Some of them are not. Um, yeah, and you could just tell when they're giving you the yeah, I don't, whatever. Um, but definitely less like you. I'm going to focus on the positives because I don't, that's so the positive thing. I would say it went from I've never heard of this. Uh, who is this? What is this? To I've got people coming in and asking for this. Oh, this is that brand. I've had people come in and ask about this. And I always say that the most powerful salesperson in cigars is the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
And so a consumer is going to be more powerful than me or any sales rep in the game because you guys, or consumers, for example, um, speak with their wallets, right? And they're spending money at a retailer versus trying to get money out of a retailer. So that
Right.
in and of itself puts them in a better position than us, if you know what I'm saying. So,
Mhm.
but our hope is to, by taking money out of the retailers' pockets, we're putting even more back into their pockets when they sell the cigars. And so, um, yeah, man, I think that is probably the biggest change that I've seen, especially over the last year.
Well, and we've talked about this on Deep Cuts a lot this year in particular, how the consumer now is willing to try new brands that they're not familiar with. They're willing to go outside of, the younger adult cigar smoker is, willing to just kind of smoke everything. They don't have they may have a favorite cigar, but they don't have like that one brand and that's the only brand they smoke. Whereas like the older
Right,
cigar smoker pretty much has like an established, like I only smoke XYZ brand. My grandfather smoked it. His
right,
his father smoked it. We all smoke this one brand. It's the only good one in the market. I'm not really interested in all this new stuff. So I
right.
think that kind of gives you a little bit of an advantage now.
So I think that us in the position like brands like mine are in a unique position that we could be those brands for people that are beginning their cigar journey now, in the middle of their cigar journey. I guess for me, it's just, man, I want to just be a part of a rotation. I don't want anybody to only, there's way too many good cigars out there to only smoke one brand. And if you only smoke one brand, you get burnt out on it. But I think the psychology of the consumer even now is probably different than it was even 10 years ago, let alone 20 or 30 years ago. So that all goes into it. But I think I always tell people, like, I just want to be a part of the rotation, and that's kind of what you aim for, at least on my end. So.
And I think you're right in that there's a lot more psychology in terms of the consumer and the buying habits than what we think.
Oh, yeah.
And unfortunately, there are plenty of books on consumer psychology, but there's none specialized like in the cigar industry. So everyone makes their assumptions of what the consumer wants and is looking for, and then it kind of gets hard to convince the different levels of the industry, whether it's the manufacturing side or the wholesale distributor side or the retailer side. It's hard to convince them otherwise, but it is a lot of mindset. Some consumers buy based on reviews, some buy based on how a box or the branding looks. It's all over the place, and we never take some of that stuff into account.
Right. Absolutely. A lot of it goes into that, for sure. I always joke with people that, in the almost 6 years I've been doing this now, I've seen different things kind of come and go. And I always tell people, well, Patina could never be cool or like uncool because it was never cool to begin with. Like, you know what I'm saying? You can't be like, so it's like, we just want to be slow and steady, man. That's it. Slow and steady. And that's okay. Build it one SKU, one store, one consumer at a time. And that's what I focus on.
Yeah, that reminds me of last night I was watching this movie called Torn Hearts. It's about an aging country star who's kind of gone deranged. It's a horror movie. And at one point the two women who encountered this deranged country star was like, I think we should leave now. We've outstayed our welcome. And the crazy country star is like, well, you were never welcome to begin with. So
yeah, I mean, it's like, I just want to be, I don't know. It's not about it's just about creating some really good cigars that somebody could buy anytime for a fair price and enjoy them. That's what it's about, man. So you're not going to see much flash from Patina ever. So, yeah.
So where are your cigars made at?
So cigars are made at Noxa in SLE, Nicaragua American. So, you'll have brands such as CLE, Dapper, Dunbarton, Crowned Heads is moving some of their production there, post on, the Pichardo thing. So, yeah, excited about that. That's, for those that don't know, that's the Oliva tobacco family. That's kind of their factory, who are massive suppliers of tobacco to the entire industry. So it's, man, I talked about establishing legitimacy, right? So for a small brand, it's like, how do you go about establishing legitimacy? And part of that is, who's your factory? Who's your distributor? Who are the brokers that you're using, the reps? I mean, I'm trying to be something that I could grow into versus grow out of and then scramble to find somewhere that fits. So if that makes sense. So everything that that I've put together so far is completely based on growing into something and being ready for that growth. And I've been lucky enough to grow every year, even though the beginning of the pandemic was really tough for like a brand like mine, but found a way through it, and we continue to grow. And so, yeah, it's pretty cool, man. And that's a thank you to everybody that believes and supports Patina. So it's not like I did it on my own. It's because of people. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Now, for you,
yeah.
like you have all these different cigar making or producing countries. So,
hmm
why did you choose Nicaragua for yours?
So when it comes to my personal preferences, that fit more of what I like. And additionally, that's where I felt like I had the most contacts
Hmm.
at that time. So I could get a better, how do I say it, more access, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious because, like, it's always interesting to hear why people choose Nicaragua, say, over Dominican Republic or Honduras. It's like everyone has their own preference in
Oh
each
yeah, I
country.
mean, now if you're talking about political stability, I should have gone to the Dominican. Because yeah, I mean, Honduras and Nicaragua aren't exactly pillars of stability. So that makes things a little interesting. But other than that,
Yeah, I guess when you talk about the political stability of Nicaragua, I know that I know on for example on a half wheel a couple weeks ago, there's this whole
hmm
big thing about Nicaragua's you know is the U.S. considering like a ban on Nicaraguan products? Could that
hmm
hit the cigar industry? Do you as a cigar maker who operates or has cigars coming out of Nicaragua? Do you have any concern about stuff like that, or do you kind of think is one of those like, do we really have to worry about that right now?
I don't know if you necessarily have to worry about that in particular, but I think political instability is always in the back of your mind a little bit,
Hmm.
to a certain degree. Um, and even not just political stability or instability, but also like economic. Um, Even in the U.S., we're kind of like in this midst of a slowdown, and we're going to see what happens. But I think a lot of that will change the dynamics of a lot of different things.
Hmm.
Uh, so that stuff is always there. It's not just like we're going to throw some tobacco together, slap a band on it, put it in a couple boxes, and then send it. Like there's a lot of thought that goes into like how are we going to strategically do this in a way that will have minimal disruptions and also like be able to be sustainable, right? And get through different cycles of not only politics but also regulatory and also economic from a consumerism perspective.
Now, for you, when you getting back to your product, what
Mhm.
what makes a cigar good in your opinion? Because I know that you asked that question, and everybody has their own thing. For some people, is flavor stuff. For some people, it's construction stuff. So, what makes a cigar good for you?
If I'm consuming, who I'm with,
Hmm.
and that's a big part of it, right? Who I'm smoking with. But from when you're looking at it from like the side of making cigars, I think it's for me consistency. It's probably consistency and a flavor profile that could be replicated over and over. And I always talk about this too, is I try to use tobaccos in my cigars that I know are readily available to my factory that I use. And that way I could have a better chance of achieving consistency in the cigars. Because I think ultimately, like if I go to McDonald's in Chicago or Durham or Raleigh or Atlanta or Phoenix, that quarter pounder with cheese is probably going to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really what, man, I'm trying to go for is like consistency and flavor. Flavor over power for sure.
Is consistency really easy to achieve in the cigar industry, or is it a lot harder than what people think? Because
Oh, of course,
like
you're going to have the variations and the crop and
Mhm.
from year to year. And but again, when you're at a bigger factory that has a lot of tobacco, that's kind of advantageous because they have tobacco for years in advance. So it's that helps too.
So when it came time to create that first Patina cigar,
Hmm.
what was that process like? Because I can imagine it being both exciting because you're like, yay, this is gonna be the first thing. It's gonna be like our first, big to do,
Yeah,
and then it's like the task of actually putting it together is probably a little bit daunting. So what was that process like for you?
yeah. So and some people that are watching might know this already, but so for the first year and change, Patina was made at Casa Favilli at the Mombacho Cigars factory.
Mm-hmm.
So I was working with Claudio at that time. Um, and so Claudio was a guy that obviously came from Davidoff, worked with Henke Kellner, and so that was a pretty cool experience. But Claudio was one. We were like Claudio. Like I didn't want to do a Connecticut, but then like when you're looking at, even though most people will tell you they smoke, oh man, I'm a Maduro guy, or I'm a whatever guy, or woman or whatever. Um, but what you find is that people mostly smoke milder cigars, regardless of what people might make you think. So I knew that a good Connecticut was going to be key as a cornerstone of building a brand that was gonna be able to withstand the test of time. So yeah, it was like, and that was right at the beginning when a lot of people were going for more flavorful Connecticut. So got in right at the right time of that kind of switch, if you
Mm-hmm.
will, in consumer preference in Connecticut's. So I think we were able to nail that and got lucky on timing that it kind of was where the industry was going with that.
And what was the name of that first cigar that you came up with?
Just Patina Connecticut and then Patina Habano.
I think that's cool too because I'm always curious about the naming because you see some
Yeah,
companies
real
really
creative.
creative, really
Yeah,
really off the wall with the
yeah,
naming, and then others are
yeah,
straightforward. And I think probably you're probably ahead of your time because I think consumers now just want to know, you know, this like give it to me and tell me what it is. Like I don't need a cutesy name for the cigar per se.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
I just want to know, like you said, if it's a Connecticut, it's a Maduro, let that be in the name. Let them hurry up and get in the humidor and get that, and they don't have to do their research and saying like, let me look up what this
yeah.
is. So
So man, I look at the guys that have been doing this for much longer than I have, and you try to learn. Uh, I think if you have an ego, it hurts you in anything, not just cigars or whatever, but anything. So for me, man, I'm looking at what are the guys doing that have been doing this for a really long time? How do they do things? What types of, like, how have they built their brand? Because my goal is not for Mo to be selling cigars. Patina should be selling the cigars. I should be supporting Patina, if that makes sense.
mhm.
So like that's why on all the bands, on all of the cigars, first and foremost they say Patina. They're all the same band, um, and that to me makes the most sense because that's your brand, right? And whatever the cigar is secondary to your brand. So if Patina builds a good reputation, then it doesn't matter what it's called because it's a Patina. So that's kind of how I look at it.
When you say you look, kind of at what other brands are doing, like do you look
Hmm.
outside of the cigar industry as well for kind of inspiration, or do you kind of just kind of want to see what? other companies similar to yours and similar to cigars are doing?
Yeah, no, both. Yeah, in and out of. I mean, there are so many like legendary people in the cigar industry, so you don't even have to look out of the cigar industry. But of
Right.
course, you know, outside of the cigar industry too.
I'm always curious about people when they're first starting out a company, like some of the mistakes that they make, because we don't talk about
Hmm.
mistakes. We only talk about, the successes, and then it makes it look like, that like it makes you mad if
Yeah,
you're from the outside and you see somebody and they say, you need to see that success stuff, success after success after success, and yet there's probably a whole bunch of
you're
failures,
right.
right? And there's all these failures in between
Yeah,
that never get talked about, get swept under the rug. So for you, when you look
yeah,
back at stuff, we'll talk about the positive stuff as well, but when you
yeah.
look back at like, what did you learn from some of the failures that you made?
Heck yeah, man, absolutely. So first and foremost, I probably would have done a Connecticut and a Maduro to start out instead of Connecticut and Habano. That's one thing. I would have spent more time understanding consumer behavior and consumer purchasing patterns before much earlier than I did, right? I wasn't a salesperson. I was an accountant and a commodity guy before Patina, so it wasn't like I was involved in sales or marketing or anything like that. I should have gotten more experience with that kind of stuff. And I don't know, man. I mean, tons of mistakes. God, yeah, I'm sure there's a bunch of other ones, but those are the first two that kind of come to my mind. Like big picture mistakes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I guess when it comes to like learning how, about the consumer behavior stuff, like where do you go for that kind of information though? Because like
Mm,
it's not a lot of source.
observation.
Right.
Observation, being open to what people are telling you. Like for me, it's trying to take away the no's that I get from retailers, for example. Like little things that you might add throughout time, like SKUs, barcodes, shelf-friendly boxes. We're adding secondary bands to all of the cigars because that was some feedback that we were getting. Like, hey man, you have 4 lines now. The Habano sometimes, even though it has a SKU on it and a whatever, but still sometimes the Habano and the Maduro could be, and then sometimes the Connecticut and the Habano could look. And so it's like, okay, we need to address this because I've heard it from enough people. And so we're going to start putting Boveda bags in every box now too. So teaming up with them, just little things like that, where you're listening to what people are telling you. You're not above getting better. And I mean, really, the SKUs and stuff probably should have been something right off the bat. If I can go back and do it all over, that would have been, because you're making it easier for the retailer, right? And the easier you can make it for the retailer, the more you help yourself for them to give you a shot. Uh, but yeah, man, it's just listening and learning. That's really what it's about, and observation and learning as well.
And I found that in lots of businesses, the more simpler you can make the whole business, either the processes or the product, then the better. And yet we always want to
Yeah,
complicate it. We want things to be, high level. It's almost like the more complicated it is, the better we think it turns out to be, which it's not. So I think
no, no, usually
simplified,
not.
right? The simplified
Yeah,
approach is
yeah,
usually the best approach.
hmm, absolutely.
So, like, this is an Oprah type question, but what did you
And
have? What?
Oprah,
Yeah, I'd say this is like an
like,
Oprah type.
is it Winfrey? All
So
right,
yeah, Oprah is a Winfrey.
all
This is
right,
like an
okay.
Oprah Winfrey type question I'm going to ask you.
All
But
right.
what's something that you've had to learn in order to become better at what you do?
Be more aggressive.
Oh, like in what way?
Uh, Believe in yourself more. Be more aggressive. Believe in what you're doing. Um, Not waiting for people to accept you.
Hmm.
Just showing them why they should accept you.
I think that's
And why. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I think that's like really interesting to say that, because we never think, we never want to admit sometimes that we need to be aggressive, yet we
Oh,
always
yeah.
to need to be a little bit more pushy in what we
Yeah,
are
man.
doing.
I mean, absolutely. Like, I took the risk to start this thing, and then I want to get scared about asking people to carry it or like telling people why they should carry it. That's just silly, And it took me a long time to be more confident. Like, man, you should have these cigars in your humidor. This is why these are good to have in your humidor. This is why you should smoke patina. And just because, again, and it goes back to keep staying even keeled, because you're going to meet one person that doesn't like your cigars, the next person, your cigars are the best thing in the world. And learning to drown all of that out allows you to remember what it took to even start, why you did it, and why you believe there's a place for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly believe that there is a place for patina in everybody's rotation, everybody's humidor, whether retailer or consumer. I truly believe that, because the cigars they're unique, and they're smoke at any time of the day type of cigars. Any one of them, all four of them. So
off of that question, how do you personally deal with rejection or hearing a no? Because that's another hang up with a lot of business entrepreneur type people. They say they're okay with no's, and then they get faced with a no, and sometimes it derails
yeah.
for a couple of days, or it
Uh,
makes them mad. So how do you deal with it in your life?
okay, so that's evolved over time. Again, it's like a callus from the gym. You know what I mean? When you first start working out, your hands get out, and then after a while. But for me, it's just like, okay, or whatever. But ultimately, I can tell you some of my best retailers today told me no for a year, 2 years, 3 years in some instances. And today, they're some of my best customers. So there's a no of get the heck out of my store. I want nothing to do with you. Your cigars are terrible. There's no place for them. You're a joke, whatever. Okay. But then there's a no that where the door is still open. And luckily, I don't get any of those types of no's. But even if somebody tells you no today, it doesn't mean it's a no always. And part of that is respecting yourself, respecting the retailer and what they've told you, and not, somebody says no to you, it's like, okay, what are you going to get mad? You're going to go badmouth them and stuff like that. In a year, they might say yeah, and they might go deep. I just opened a retailer this week that I've been trying to get into for 4 years.
Wow.
4 years. And imagine if I went out and I'm like talking crap about these people because they said no to me.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't work that way. Or I got down and out about myself. So you got to always believe in yourself through the no's and understand that that's just a part of it. That's just a part of it, man. And you can't let it deter you too much.
And it sounds like it requires learning a little bit of patience and knowing that
Yes,
nothing's
which a lot of people, you just hit it on the head. If you do not have patience, you cannot handle no.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So be patient. It's okay. It takes time sometimes,
Now, I know from the you have a new cigar or newish cigar that you are promoting, which is the Sumatra.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that and give us a little
Yeah.
background information on it? Tell us what
Sure.
inspired it. Like, give us all the
Sure.
details.
Okay, so here comes the boringest. No, I'm kidding. So how it started was, okay, so the way I look at the market is, what are your major wrappers? Connecticut, some sort of Maduro, a medium, whether that's a Corojo, Habano, whatever. Although some guys will use Habano for very strong cigars. Depends which way you want to go. And for me, that next natural evolution was a Sumatra. And like for me, it was always like, okay, who does Sumatra really well? You know, so you smoke some of those, you kind of get an idea of where you think you could fit, but keep your brand's profile within that. And so that's kind of like how I started that journey with the Sumatra. And then initially, it was going to be a store exclusive for one of my customers who then decided not to do it. And so we tweaked it from there a bit, and that's what we got today. And so it's a Spiro Sumatra from Ecuador with a Connecticut broadleaf binder and fillers from the U.S. and Nicaragua. So it's pretty good cigar. First double banded cigar too for Patina.
Wow.
And so when people saw those double bands at the show, they're like, dude, you got to do all of your cigars like this. And I heard it from enough people to where we did it. So in the near future, all Patinas will be double banded. And then we have the 5-year anniversary, even though it's going to be the 6th year when it comes out. But, you know, supply chain, right? So,
I think it's regular in the cigar industry. There's companies, you know, I know Espinosa, for example, celebrating all their 10th anniversary stuff is coming out, and yet this year's their 11th anniversary. So that's normal.
Yeah, so we're a year behind, but it's okay. So I'm excited about that cigar. There'll be 500 boxes of that, 10 count, so 5,000 total, and that'll be a Connecticut broadleaf.
Wow. And then, like, what are your other kind of regular cigars that you have in your portfolio?
The Connecticut Habano and the Maduro. All fancily named. Yeah. Hard to remember.
And you said that they're good for kind of like even the cigar smoker who might be just starting out and not so much the, you know, you don't have to be the aficionado to enjoy the Patina cigar.
What we found in retailers across the board is a universal nature of the cigars, that they could give them to people that are just starting getting into cigars, as well as people that have been smoking for 30 years, 40 years. There is an ease to the way the cigars smoke that is approachable for everybody, no matter how long they've been smoking cigars. And like that, to me, is what we shoot for. Whether it's the Maduro, Sumatra, Connecticut, you can literally smoke any of those cigars at any time of the day and be fine. And smoke another cigar right after it, and you'll be able to taste that cigar. That's always the goal, is to leave your palate wanting more, not burnt out. You know, that's kind of how I look at it.
Awesome. At this point in the show, I usually ask the guests the same questions from show to show. So these are kind of get the rapid fire questions, but you can answer them however you would like. The first of those questions is what is your why? Like, what motivates you to do what you do?
Nothing in the world brings people together like cigars, and being a part of that is the greatest feeling in the world. When I see a group of people sitting around and there's some of them are smoking Patina, all of them are smoking Patina, you're a part of bringing people closer together, and the world needs more of that. People need to be closer. They need to get out and get to know each other, and not sit behind keyboards or whatever, and you know, spew whatever. Get out there, know each other. Cigars are a great medium for that, and that's the best part about it, man. No doubt about it. You can go to a cigar shop. Doesn't matter if you're a CEO, a police officer, a public works employee, whatever. Doesn't matter. This thing is the greatest equalizer ever, and to be a part of that is a great feeling. That's the why.
It's a good why.
Yeah, it is. I think so. Yeah, it's awesome. Great feeling.
Someone comes to you and they say they have an idea for a business. It might not necessarily be a cigar or tobacco related business, but they know that you've kind of gone out and kind of done this on your own, and you have the experience. what advice do you have for like the new business, kind of entrepreneur type who wants to get out there and do something on their own? How should they approach getting started?
If you're not willing to sacrifice stability, then don't even start. Because one of the first things that will go will be stability. Stability with your free time, stability with your time in general, financial stability, all of it. Because you've now made a commitment to where a lot of the things that were guaranteed are no longer guaranteed. So I think that would be the first thing I'd say. And the second thing I would say would be don't let your own fears stop you. If you believe in it, go for it. And if you fail, it's okay. I mean, honestly, I think too many people are scared of failure. It's going to be hard to be successful if you're scared to fail. And I don't care. That's anything.
Awesome. I know a lot of people in the cigar industry love a good collaboration. If at any point you wanted to collaborate with, if you had the opportunity, I should say, to collaborate with anybody or any company or other brand in the industry, who would that, big collaboration be, and what kind of, what would you hope will come out of that collaboration?
It would be Nelson Alfonso from, Selected Tobaccos, Byron and Anime. He is one of the most accomplished, humble people I've met, not only in the cigar industry, but in any industry, for the level of success that he's achieved. And for, I don't know how many people even know who he is, but that would definitely be the guy, man, for me. And the type of collaboration, I'm not sure, but just something elegant, something, with he ages a lot of his tobacco for a long time, so that would be pretty cool.
Awesome. Now, for those people who are not watching this, they may be listening to just the audio version. Can you tell people what website they need to go to, what social media, all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah. PatinaCigars.com is our website. I think 90 to 95% of the hits that we get on the website are straight to the store locator page. So we have that on there. So that's always makes me laugh, which is pretty cool. On Instagram, we're at Patina Cigars, and I run that. So if you have any questions or whatever, feel free. Try to be as transparent as possible, man. I mean, we build through connection, and so I'm always trying to connect with people. And when people post Patina, and I see it, I try to repost it and tell them how appreciative I am, because again, without the people, nobody works for free. Nobody gets their paycheck for just sitting. I mean, so for people to say, hey, your product is worth the money that I make, I really appreciate that. So I try to be as accessible as possible and all of that.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for coming on today and
No, man, thank you for having me. Yeah.
Well, like I said, I really wanted to learn more about Patina and get to speak to you. I tell people, usually when I see people like you, it's at a trade show and there's like a line of retailers. So it's like we can't have a real conversation, and then there's always plans after the show.
What do you mean people like me?
I'm saying like when the
No, I'm kidding. I'm messing with you, man.
Don't start the drama. Don't start the drama.
I'm messing with you, man.
Don't start the drama. Don't bring it.
Yeah, no.
But thank you for coming on, and like I said, and answering all the questions, and I would love to have you back on at some point.
It would be an honor.
So now that we've got all the basic information, we can do some deep dives into some other parts of the industry and cigars, because I think a lot of people, and I found this, is that there's a lot of people who say they know a lot about cigars and the industry, but they don't really know. There's a lot of untapped information and unshared information. So I'm hoping that, we can have conversations just about the industry and help people understand what it's all about. And it's not, we smoke a cigar and we don't really give thought to how all the work that goes into like creating that one cigar. It's not
You're talking, some of the most unsung people in the entire industry, unfortunately, are people that, normal consumers are never going to get to meet. And whether that's the roller or, sorter at the factory level to the production manager to the master blenders, there's so many people that deserve a lot of praise for what they do. And, that without those people, there are no cigars. And a lot of those people work every day through the pandemic. There was no working from home. There was no whatever. So those people are really the ones, man, that really make this all possible. So, a lot of credit goes to them.
Definitely. Well, like I said, thank you again for coming on.
Yeah.
And
thank you, sir.
And thank everyone for watching. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, just make sure you hit that like or subscribe button. And if you're listening to this on any of the podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts or Spotify or iHeartRadio, just make sure you subscribe and also leave a review. As I always say, you can say something that you liked about the show. You can say something that you don't like about the show. It's not going to hurt my feelings either way. There's always room for improvement. So just leave a review. I would appreciate it. If you missed any of this episode or the other 114 episodes that came before it, you could catch up on deepcutslive.com or on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com/deepcutslive and you'll find all the episodes and videos there. And that's it for today. And until next time.